In the dark shadows, in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read the ancient tomes. The order of the Abracast. We are the brave and the bold. The Abracast. Occult, history, conspiracy, and violence.
Welcome to the Abracast. John Towers here. We're going to be doing kind of a back to basics sort of episode this evening. We've been working our way through Exodus for quite some time, not as regularly as I would have foreseen, but we are getting close to the end. We got a couple more probably. So I'm just going to jump right in here and try to get as much of it out of the way as I can. A few things before we go. I have my vessel of the art filled to the brim right now with my weapon of mass distraction, the formula for my weapon of mass distraction, the infamous jihad. So we're going to get this party started, and before we go, I don't know what... Obviously, I don't know what podcast app that you are listening to the show on. I'm on, if not all of them, damn near all of them. But I have kind of always been a Stitcher guy. When I first started listening to podcasts, that was the app that I started using, and I had a little bit of brand loyalty when like the different podcatchers and stuff started coming out. I kind of just stuck with Stitcher. Anyhow, if you're listening to Stitcher and you haven't heard, they're closing up shop. Stop, drop, closing up shop. That's how Rough Riders roll. So I believe their podcast links or whatever are being transferred to Pandora. And I discovered that I'm not on Pandora, so I will be soon, I guess. If now's a good time, if you are a Stitcher user, to go ahead and find another podcatcher app to listen to. And for some reason, if you can't find the show on there, shoot me an email or a message. You can find all that stuff at abracast.com. The best social media way to find me these days is on Instagram. Just shoot me a message and I will get them submitted, or I can provide a RSS link to you if you want to submit that. Whatever is easiest, whatever you want to do. So, I believe in this, where we ended, is we're building, or we have built the Tabernacle. So we're going to jump right into this section. I'm reading, probably bounce back and forth as always from these episodes, from my King James version and The Legend of the Jews by Ginsburg, which is obviously a go-to text for me. Made it all the way through Genesis with it, and god damn it, we're going to finish Exodus. So we're going to be opening up talking about the symbolical significance of the tabernacle. So this is their little house that they built, the ark and everything goes into, and this is fascinating. You'll find people break this down in all kinds of different ways and extrapolate, different theories or whatever from it. I should have chased down. There was a real good YouTube video about it. Anyhow, the separate parts of the tabernacle had each a symbolical significance. For to all that is above, what do we know, guys? There is something corresponding below. There are stars above, but likewise below, where a star shall come out of Jacob, God, and his hosts above, and likewise below his people Israel. The hosts of the Lord above are the Ophanim, and on earth likewise there is an Ophan. Above God has cherubim, and likewise below in the sanctuary of Israel God hath his dwelling above. But likewise below, and lastly, God hath stretched out the heavens above like a curtain, and below in the sanctuary were curtains of goat's hair. Oh yeah, some mother's milk. The number of curtains also corresponds with those in heaven, for just as there are 11 upper heavens, also there were 11 curtains of goat's hair. The size of the tabernacle was 70 cubits, corresponding with the 70 holy days celebrated annually by the Jews, to wit, 52 Sabbaths, 7 days of Passover, 8 tabernacles, and a day each for Pentecost, the Day of Atonement, and New Year's Day. The number of vessels amounted to 70 also, and likewise God, Israel, and Jerusalem bear 70 names. And as correspondingly in the time between the building of the first and second temple, there were 70 consecutive Sanhedrin. Like the tabernacle, so the altar too had its symbolical significance. Its length and its breadth were 5 cubits each, corresponding respectively to the 5 commandments on the 2 tables of the law. Its height was 3 cubits, corresponding to the 3 deliverers God sent to deliver Israel from Egypt: Moses, Aaron, Miriam. Had 4 horns in the corner, therefore, to atone for the sins of the people. On that Sinai received 4 horns: the horn of Torah, the horn of the Shekinah, and the horn of priesthood, and the horn of the kingdom. What about the horn of Gondor? In the tabernacle, as later in the temple, gold, silver, and brass were employed, but not iron. God meant to indicate by the exclusion of iron that in the future time the golden Babylon, the silver Media, the brazen Greece would be permitted to bestow the gifts of the new temple, but not the iron Rome. So if I'm not mistaken, I didn't do the reading ahead, so I'm kind of a loser, but I believe this is talking about Nebuchadnezzar's dream in Daniel, where Daniel interprets the dream. There's a magnificent statue with a head of gold, and then weaker and less valuable metals beneath, until it winds up having feet of clay mixed with iron. So I believe this is just a reference to that. You know, in these books, in these stories, the legends of the Jews, the oral traditions that Ginsburg is documenting and writing down, we see this often where God is, one of his things is, they have these midrashes and these like little kind of fan fiction stories, and one of the things that they really like to do, in my humble opinion, is showcase God's mastery over time. You know, the God of space and time. It is true that Babylon also destroyed the sanctuary of God, like Rome, but not with such fury and such through-going wraths as Rome, whose sons cried, "Raise it, raise it," even to the foundations thereof. And for this reason, Rome may not contribute to the Messianic temple. And as God will reject the gifts of Rome, so also will the Messiah, to whom all the nations of the earth will have to offer gifts. Egypt will come with her gifts, and although the Messiah will at first refuse to accept anything from the former taskmaster of Israel, God will say to him, "The Egyptians granted my children an abode in their land. Do not repulse them." And the Messiah will accept their gifts. After Egypt will follow her neighbor Ethiopia with her gifts, thinking that if the Messiah accepted gifts from the former taskmaster of Israel, he will also accept gifts from her. Then the Messiah will also accept Ethiopia's gifts. And after these two kingdoms will follow all others with their gifts, and all will be accepted save those for Rome. This kingdom will be sorely disappointed, for depending upon their kinship with Israel, they will expect kind treatment from the Messiah, who had graciously received the other nations not connected with Israel. But God will call out to the Messiah, "Roar at this monster that devours the fat of nations, that justifies its claims for recognition through being a descendant of Abraham by his grandson Esau. The nation that forgives all for the sake of money, that kept Israel back from the study of the Torah and tempted them to the deeps that are in accord with the wishes of Satan." So all this Abraham Esau stuff, if you want to go back to the feature topic link on Abracast.com and go through the quite packed section that we did on Genesis, you can get those stories there. The priestly robes. Simultaneously with the construction of the tabernacle and its vessels were fashioned the priestly robes of Aaron and his sons. It was at this time that God made known to Aaron's appointment to the high office of high priest, saying, "Go and appoint a high priest." Moses, out of which tribe? And God said, "Of the tribe of Levi." Moses was not happy upon hearing that the high priest was to be chosen out of his tribe, and the joy was increased when God added, "Appoint to thy brother Aaron as high priest." The choice of Aaron was, of course, also a disappointment to Moses, who had hoped God would appoint him as the high priest. But God had designed this dignity for Aaron, to remove him to reward him for his pious deeds when Israel worshipped the golden calf. For when Moses returned from Sinai and saw the calf fashioned by Aaron, he thought his brother was no better than the rest of the people, and had, like them, devoted himself to idolatry. But God knew that Aaron's participation in the construction of the calf was merely due to the pious motive of delaying the people until Moses could return. Hence, he even said to Aaron, "I am fully aware of thy motive, and as truly as thou livest, I shall appoint thee as warden over the sacrifices that my children offer me." In consideration for Moses' feelings, God gave into his hand the appointment of Aaron, saying to him, "I might have installed thy brother as the high priest without having informed thee of it, but I relinquish his appointment to thee, that thou mayest have an opportunity of showing the people thy humility, and that thou dost speak this high office for thyself." At God's bidding, Aaron and his two sons were now chosen as priest, and moreover, not for a limited period, but Aaron and his house were invested with the priesthood for all eternity. As soon as these were installed as priests, Moses set to work to instruct them thoroughly in the priestly laws. And God ordered the following 8 garments as Arab's garb: a coat, breeches, a mitre, a girdle, a breastplate, ephod, robe, and a golden plate. But his sons needed only the first 4 garments. All of these garments had expiatory virtues, and each expiated a different, definite sin. The coat atoned for murder, the breeches for unchastity, the mitre for pride, and the girdle for theft, the breastplate for partial verdicts, and the ephod for idolatry. The bells on the robes were for slander, and the golden plate for effrontery. The breastplate and the ephod were set with precious stones, which were the gifts of the noble to the sanctuary, although to be exact, they were in reality gifts from God. And precious stones and pearls had rained down with the manna which the noble among Israel had gathered up and laid away until the tabernacle was erected. And they offered them as gifts. And the ephod only had 2 precious stones, one at each shoulder. And on each of these stones were engraved the names of the 6 tribes in the following order: Reuben, who makes the best sandwich; Levi, who makes the best blue jeans; Issachar, Naphtali, Gad, Joseph, and on the right shoulder piece, Simon, Judah, Zebulun, Dan, Asher, Benjamin on the left shoulder. The name Joseph was spelled Joseph, a device by which the 2 stones had exactly the same number of letters engraved upon them. On the breastplate there were 12 precious stones, on which the names of the 3 patriarchs preceded those of the 12 tribes, and at the end were engraved the words, "All these are the 12 tribes of Israel." So the spelling of the name weird to equal the numbers is a very magician thing to do. It's like it almost cracked me up. The 12 this is the stones in the breastplate. The 12 stones differ not only in color but in certain qualities. So whenever I think of this breastplate, it's a fault of mine. I always try to connect the different stones with the different sephiroths on the Kabbalistic tree of life. However, it's clear that they're actually for the 12 tribes. Okay. It says it right here. The 12 stones differ not only in color, but also in certain qualities peculiar to each, and both quality and color had a special reference to the tribe whose name it bore. Reuben's stone was ruby, and has the property, when graded by a woman and tasted by her, of promoting pregnancy, for it was Reuben who found the mandrakes which induced pregnancy. Again, it sounds like some magician shit going on here. Simeon's stone was smaragd, and the property of breaking as soon as an unchaste woman looks at it, fitting the stone for whose sire Simeon was kindles to the wrath by the unchaste action of Shisham. It was at the same time a warning to the tribe of Simon that committed the whoredom at Shittim and the daughters of Moab to be mindful of chastity and, like its stone, suffer no prostitution. Levi's stone was a carbuncle that beams like lightning, as likewise the face of the tribe beamed with piety and erudition. The stone has the virtue of making him who wears it wise, but true wisdom is the fear of God. And it was this tribe alone that did not join in the worship of the golden calf. Judah's stone was a green emerald that has the power of making its owner victorious in battle. It's a fitting stone for this tribe, which springs the Jewish dynasty of kings that routed his enemies. The color green alludes to the shame that turned Judah's countenance green when he publicly confessed to his crime with Tamar. Issachar's stone was sapphire, for his tribe devoted themselves completely to the study of the Torah. And it's very stone, the sapphire, out of which the 2 tablets of the law were hewn. The stone increases strength of vision and heals many diseases, as the Torah likewise, to which this tribe was so devoted, enlightens the eyes and makes the body well. The white pearl is the stone of Zebulun, for with his merchant ships he sailed the sea and drew the substance from the ocean, from which the pearl too is drawn. The pearl has also the quality of bringing its owner sleep, and it is all the more the credit of the tribe that they nevertheless spent their nights on commercial ventures to maintain their brother tribe, Isaacers, that lived only for the study of the Torah. The pearl is furthermore round like the fortune of the rich and turns like a wheel. And in this way, the wealthy tribe of Zebulun were kept in the mind of fickleness of fortune. Dan's stone was a species of topaz, in which was visible the inverted face of a man, for the Danites were sinful, turning good to evil, hence the inverted face in their stone. This turquoise was Naphtali's stone, for it gives its owner speed in riding, and Naphtali's was a hind let loose. Gad's stone was the crystal that endows its owner the courage in battle, and hence served this warlike tribe that battled for the Lord as a admonition to fear none and build on God. The crystallite was Asher's stone, and this stone aids in digestion. It makes its owner sturdy and fat. So were the agricultural products of Asher's tribe of such excellent quality that they made fat those who ate them. And Joseph's stone was the onyx that has virtue, endowing him who wears it with grace. And truly by his grace did Joseph find the favor in the eyes of all. Jasper was Benjamin's stone, and this stone turns color, being now red, now green, now even black. So did Benjamin's feelings vary to his brothers. Sometimes he was angry with them for having sold into slavery Joseph and the other brothers by his mother Rachel, and in this mood he came near betraying their deed to his father, but that he might not disgrace his brothers, he did not divulge their secret. To this discretion on the part alludes the Hebrew name of his stone, Yashpheth. Everyone's just tuning out. I'm having a hard time with these Hebrew words today. Which signifies there is a mouth for Benjamin, though he had a mouth, did not utter the words that would have covered his brothers with disgrace. The 12 stones in the breastplate with their bright colors were of great importance in the oracular sentences of the high priest, whom by means of these stones made the Urim and the Thummim exercise their functions. For whenever the king or the head of the Sanhedrin wished to get directions from the Urim and Thummim, he betook himself to the high priest. The latter, robed in his breastplate and ephod, bade him to look into his face and to submit his inquiry. The high priest, looking down on his breastplate, then looked to see which of the letters engraved on the stones shone out most brightly, and constructed the answer out of these letters. Thus, for this example, when David inquired of the Urim and the Thummim if Saul would pursue him, the high priest Abiathar beheld gleaming forth the letter Yod in Judah's name, Rush in Reuben's name, and Daylight in Dan's name. Hence the answer read as follows: Yered, he will pursue. It's like a ancient divine, I don't know, Wheel of Fortune or something. Where's Vanna White to point out the shining letters? But again, that's more magician stuff, right? It's looking at divinations or some kind of bibliomancy. It's interesting. The information on this oracle was always trustworthy, for the meaning of the name Urim and Tumim is in the fact that these answers spread light on the truth, but not every high priest succeeded in obtaining them. Only a high priest who was permeated with the Holy Spirit and over whom rested the Shekinah might obtain these answers, for in other cases the stones withheld their power. But if the high priest was worthy, he received an answer to every inquiry, for on these stones were engraved all the letters of the alphabet, so that all conceivable words could be constructed from them. The completion of the Tabernacle. On the 11th day of Tishri, Moses assembled the people and informed them that it was God's wish to have sanctuary among them. And each man was bidden to bring the sanctuary any offerings he pleased. At the same time, he impressed upon them that, however pious a deed participation in the construction of the tabernacle might be, still they might under no circumstances break the Sabbath to hasten to building of the sanctuary. Moses thereupon expounded to them the kind of work that was permissible on the Sabbath, and the king that was prohibited, for there was not less than 39 occupations in the pursuit of which on the Sabbath was punishable by death. Owing to the importance and keeping of the Sabbath, Moses imparted the precepts concerning it directly to the great masses of people that he had gathered together, and not to the elders alone. In this he acted according to God's commandment, who said to him, "Go, Moses, call together the great assemblages and announce the Sabbath laws to them, that the future generations may follow thy example, and on Sabbath days assemble the people in the synagogues and instruct them in the Torah, that they may know what is prohibited and what is permitted, that my name may be glorified among my children." In the spirit of the command, and Moses institute that on every holy day there might be preaching in the synagogues, and the instructions concerning the significance of the special holy day. He summoned the people to these teachings with the words, "If you will follow my example, God will count it for you, as if you had acknowledged God as your king throughout the world." The stress laid on the observance of the Sabbath laws was quite necessary, for the people were so eager to deliver up their contributions that on Sabbath Moses had to have an announcement proclaimed that they were to take nothing out of their houses, as the carrying of things on Sabbath is prohibited, for Israel is a peculiar people that answered the summons to fetch gold for the calf, and with no less zeal answered the summons of Moses to give contributions to the tabernacle. They were not content to bring things out of their houses and treasuries, but forcibly snatched ornaments from their wives and their daughters and their sons, and brought them to Moses for the construction of the tabernacle. In this way they thought they could cancel their sin in having fashioned the golden calf. Then had they used their ornaments in the construction of the idol, and now they employed them for the sanctuary of God. The women, however, were no less eager to contribute their might, as they were especially active in producing the woolen hangings. They did this in no miraculous way, that they spun the wool while it was still upon the goats. Moses did not at first want to accept their contributions from the women, but these brought their cloaks and their mirrors, saying, "Why dost thou reject our gifts? If thou doest so because thou wantest the sanctuary, nothing that women use to enhance their charms, behold, here are our cloaks that we use to conceal ourselves from the eyes of men. But if thou art afraid to accept from us anything that might be not our property but our husband's, behold, there are our mirrors that belong to us alone and not to our husbands." And when Moses beheld these mirrors, he waxed very angry and bade the women to be driven from him. Sorry, I gotta get my shit together. Explaining, what right in the sanctuary have these mirrors that exist only to arouse sensual desires? But God said to Moses, "Truly dearer to me than all other gifts are these mirrors. For it was these mirrors that yielded me my hosts. When in Egypt the men were exhausted from their heavy labors, the women were wont to come to them with food and drink, and to take out their mirrors and caressingly say to their husbands, 'Look into the mirror. I am much more beautiful than thou.' And in this way passion seized the men, so that they forgot their cares and united themselves with their wives, who thereupon brought many children into the world. Take now these mirrors and fashion out of them the laver that contains the water for the sanctifying of the priests." Furthermore, out of this laver was fetched the water that had women suspected of adultery had to drink to prove their innocence. As formerly the mirrors had been used to kindle conjugal affection, so out of them was made the vessel for the water that was to restore broken peace between husband and wife. When Moses, upon God's command, made known the people that whosoever was willing was of a willing heart, man or woman, that might bring up an offering, the zeal of the women was so great that they thrust away the men and crowded forward with their gifts, so that in 2 days all that was needed for the construction of the tabernacle was in Moses' hands. The prince of the tribes came almost too late with their contributions, and at the last moment they brought the precious stones for the garments of Aaron, that they might not be entirely unrepresented in the sanctuary. But God took their delay amiss, and for this reason they later sought to be the first to offer up sacrifices at the sanctuary. After everything had been provided for the construction of the tabernacle, Bezalel, remember him, he's the shadow of God, set to work with the devotion of the whole soul. And as a reward for this, the Holy Scriptures speak of him only as the constructor of the sanctuary. Although many others stood by him in this labor, he began to work by fashioning the boards, then attended to the overlaying of them, and when he had completed these things, he set to work to prepare the curtains. And he completed the ark with the penance cover belonging to it, and finally the table for the shewbread and the candlestick. The work on the tabernacle progressed rapidly, for everything was ready in the month of Kislew. But it was not set up until 3 months later. The people were indeed eager to set up the sanctuary at once and to dedicate it, but God bade Moses wait until the first day of the month of Nisan, probably, because that was Isaac's birthday, and God wished the joy of dedication to take place on this day of joy. The mockers among Israel, of course, to whom this was not known, made fun of Moses, saying, "Of course it is possible that the Shekinah should rest over the work of Amram's sons." Listen to these bitches. In regards to the tabernacle, Moses had to suffer much besides from the fault finders and the wicked tongues. He showed himself up on the street, and they called out to one another, "See what a well-fed neck and sturdy legs that son of Amram has, who eats and drinks from our money." The other would answer, "Dost thou believe that one who has the construction of the tabernacle in his hands will remain a poor man?" Moses said nothing, but resolved as soon as the tabernacle should be completed to lay an exact account before the people, which he did. But when it came to giving the account, he forgot one item of 775 shekels, which he had expended for hooks upon which to hang curtains of the tabernacle. And then, as suddenly raised his eyes and saw the Shekinah resting on the hooks, and was reminded of his omission of his expenditure. Thereafter, all Israel became convinced that Moses was a faithful and reliable administrator. "I'm the chief administrator of this facility." As the people had brought much more material than was necessary for the tabernacle, Moses erected a second tabernacle outside the encampment on the spot where God had been accustomed to reveal himself to him, and this tabernacle of revelation was in all detail like the original sanctuary at the camp. So you got tabernacle 1, tabernacle 2, tabernacle 1, tabernacle 2. Say it a couple times. Tabernacle, tabernacle, tabernacle 1. When everything was ready, the people were very much disappointed that the Shekinah did not rest upon their work, but they betook themselves to the wise men who had worked on the erection of the tabernacle, and said to them, "Why do ye sit thus idle? Set up the tabernacle, that the Shekinah may dwell amongst us." These now attempted to put the tabernacle, but did not succeed, for heartily did they believe it was up when it fell down again. Now all went to Baziel and his assistant Ohiolab, stating to them, "Do you now set up the tabernacle, you who constructed it, and perhaps it will stand." But when even these two master builders did not succeed in setting up the tabernacle, the people began to find fault and say, "See now what the son of Amram has brought upon us. We spent our money and went through a great deal of trouble, all because he assured us that the Holy One, blessed be he, would descend from his place with the angels and dwell among us under the hangings of goat hair." But it has all been in vain. The people now went to Moses, saying, "Oh, our teacher Moses, we have done all thou had bidden us to do. We gave all thou didst ask of us. Look now upon this completed work, and tell us if we omitted aught, or have done aught, or we should have refrained from doing. Examine it with care, and answer us." Moses had to admit all that had been done according to his instructions. "But if it be so," continued the people, "why then cannot the tabernacle stand?" Bezalel and Ohiolab failed to set it up, and all these wise men as well. This communication sorely grieved Moses, who could not understand why the tabernacle couldn't be set up. But God said to him, "Thou wert sorry to have had no share in the erection of the tabernacle, which the people supplied with material, and which Baziel and Oholiab and the other wise men labored with them, the work of their hands. For this reason did it come to pass that none could set up the tabernacle. For I want all Israel to see that it cannot stand if thou dost not set it up." Moses replied, "O Lord, God of this world, I do not know how to set it up." And God answered, "Go, get busy with its setting up, and while thou art busy at it, it will rise of its own accord." And so it came to pass, hardly had Moses put his hands on the tabernacle, when it stood erect. And the rumors among the people that Moses had arbitrarily put up the tabernacle without the command of God ceased forevermore. So this is interesting. I'm seeing an awful lot of sex stuff in here. I don't know if it's just me. I'm in a random mood. But it's my understanding that this Shekinah is a female aspect of, like, the Holy Ghost. Like, the Holy Ghost is just like one of the boys. He's one of the trilogies or whatever. Triumvirates. What do they call them? But in these ancient Hebrew texts, or these ancient Jewish oral traditions, I believe the Shekinah is a female aspect. And, Yahweh or Jehovah would be, more of like a male aspect. We could talk about, Elohim in Genesis being plural, and also, I don't want to say cross-gender, but also plural and also masculine and feminine. So all this automatic erection business, so the Shekinah can sit on top and dwell within. I'm like, oh, I think they're talking about fucking. I don't know if anyone's hung on here to this point in the episode. Reach out to me. Let me know what you think. Am I reading too much into it? Maybe I don't have the correct understanding of the Shekinah. But I hope not to learn that now, because every time I run across the character in the text, I say it like Shekinah. I guess that's sexy. I don't know. All right, we're going to do one more section here, and then I'll pack it up for the night. We're going to talk about the consecration of the priests. Before the sanctuary and its vessels were dedicated for service, they were anointed with holy oil. On this occasion, the miracle came to pass that 12 lugs of oil sufficed not only to anoint the sanctuary and its vessels and Aaron and his 2 sons throughout the 7 days of their consecration, but the same oil were anointed all the successors of Aaron in the office of the high priest, the several kings, until the day of Josiah. A special miracle occurred when Aaron was anointed, and on his pointed beard 2 drops of holy oil hung pendant like 2 pearls, and these drops did not even disappear when he trimmed his beard, but the rose in the roots in his hair. Moses at first feared that the useless waste of these drops of holy oil on Aaron's beard might be considered sacrilege, but a divine voice quieted him. A divine voice quieted Aaron, who likewise feared that the accident that had turned the holy oil to his personal use. The anointing of Aaron and his 2 sons was not the only ceremony that consecrated them as priests, for during a whole week did they have to live near the tabernacle, secluded from the outer world, and during this time Moses performed all priestly duties, even bringing sacrifices for Aaron and his sons and sprinkling them with the blood of these sacrifices. It was only on the 23rd day of Adar that God bade Moses consecrate Aaron and his sons as priests, saying to him, "Go and persuade Aaron to accept his priestly office, for he is a man who shuns distinctions, but effect his appointment before all of Israel, that he may be honored in this way. And at the same time warn the people that after the choice of Aaron, none may assume priestly rights. Gather thou all congregation together unto the door of the tabernacle." At these last words, Moses exclaimed, "O Lord of the world, how shall I be able to assemble before the door of the tabernacle, a space that measures only 2 seas, 60 myriads of adult men, and as many youths?" But God answered, "Dost thou marvel at this? Greater miracles than this have I accomplished." The heaven was originally as thin and as small as the retina of the eye. Still I cause it to stretch out over the world from one end to another. In the future world, too, when all men from Adam at the time of the resurrection will be assembled in Zion, and the multitude will be so great that one shall call to the other, "This place is too strait for me. Give place to me that I may dwell. On that day will I so extend the holy city that will conveniently find room there." So here at the beginning we were talking about God as the God of time, and here he's the God of space. He's got the infinity gauntlet, this guy. But also the idea occurred to me that he just shrinks everyone so they can fit into this thing. You know, like he's going to turn everyone into like the size of Smurfs so they could fit in this vestibule or whatever. Actually, Smurfs weren't that small. We have this idea that they were tiny. They're actually 3 apples high. That's not so... I mean, that's taller than my vessel of the art right here. Anyhow, what am I talking about Smurfs for? Moses did as he was bidden, and in the presence of all the people took place at the election of Aaron and his sons as priests, whereupon these retired for a week to the door of the tabernacle. And during this week, in preparing the burnt offerings and the sin offerings, Moses showed his brother Aaron and Aaron's sons how to perform the different priestly functions in the sanctuary. And Moses made a sin offering because he feared that among the gifts out of which the sanctuary had been constructed, there might have been ill-gotten gains. And God loves justice and hates loot as an offering. Moses, through a sin offering, sought to obtain forgiveness for possible wrong. During this week, however, the sanctuary was only temporarily used. Moses would set it up mornings and evenings and then fold it together again. It's like IKEA. It's like an IKEA couch. And it was not until this week had passed that the sanctuary was committed in general use. After that, it was not folded together except when they moved from an encampment to another. These 7 days of retirement were assigned to Aaron and his sons, not only as a preparation for their regular service, they had another significance also. God, before bringing the flood upon the earth, observed the 7 days preceding as a week of mourning. And in the same way, he bade Aaron and his sons live in absolute retirement for a week, as is the duty of mourners, for a heavy loss awaited them, the death of Nadab and Abihu, which took place on the joyous days of their dedication. All right. Get a plan together for Stitcher if you people are using Stitcher, and have a good 4th of July. Remember, don't talk to cops. And watch out because they are fucking after you. And what else? Abracast.com, featured topic link. Check out the storefront. Check out some of the sweet merch, like the Horned Moses t-shirt, / stickers / coffee mugs / mouse pad / whatever. I'm Dr. John Towers, and I'll see you soon.
Are you interested in the occult, history, conspiracy, and violence? Learn more at Abracast.com and visit the storefront for tarot cards, merch, and books. Support the show. Get access to the show archive at subscribestar.com. Thank you for listening to this episode. Send an email or visit us on social media to let us know what you think about this topic. And please remember to leave a 5-star rate and review.